All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and we will start with the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, next we'll do roll call.
Trustee Madhato.
Here.
Trustee Chow, absent. Trustee Liu.
Here.
Trustee Vogel, absent. Trustee Leon.
Here. Okay, great. Thanks, Erin. First item of business is board agenda approval. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Satish. And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jerry. And we need a roll call vote.
Yes. Trustee Madhato.
Aye.
Trustee Liu.
Aye.
Trustee Leon.
Aye. All right, next on the agenda is public comments for our closed session. Are there any public comments?
No, there are not.
Thank you. So with that, we are going to adjourn for closed session, returning at 6 p.m. All right, good evening, everyone. I'm reconvening our board meeting. We just came back from closed session with nothing to report. And so our next item is employee organizations. Do we have any representatives speaking tonight from any of our 3 employee groups?
We do. We have CEA President Kate Lee.
Okay, great. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you.
Good evening, school board, our executive cabinet, and all of our teachers and our other bargaining units who have been working hard all over the summer, getting our schools ready for us, as well as all the parent and our community. This next week is our schools start on Monday, the teachers return, and on Thursday, the children return, the students return. So it's a exciting time, as I mentioned when we were talking, when I was welcoming Portel back in session last time, and it's such an exciting time. It's also a stressful time, teachers getting their rooms ready the first 3 days, and then on Thursday when the students come, probably the parents are trying to find all the right supplies and picking out that right outfit to wear on the first day of school, but it's also a time of such joy. It is like when we see our students' faces on that first day standing in line or coming into our classrooms, and the hope that they have, and also the little worries that they have, and welcoming them into a really safe space, and a space where all together it's a learning environment where they feel supported and we support each other. And so I welcome all of the students, the teachers back, all of the students, and all of the parents to this wonderful time, because I'm actually wearing what I think about school starting tonight. That's my t-shirt. It's probably too small a print, but I would always wear this. This is actually a vintage Regnar shirt that the teachers designed and I bought one year together. But it says peace, love, and education. I would probably edit that a little bit to say public education, because I feel public education is one of the most strongest foundations of our democracy and of our country. And it's such an amazing thing. It allows anyone who comes to our country to have access to a free education. And if it's in Cupertino Union School District, a wonderful education. And they become a member of a community outside of maybe their own small closed community, because maybe they're just moved new to the area, maybe they came from another country. And so it expands all of that. And it allows that opening of our minds and opening of our conversations and sharing of our ideas and cultures into a greater, stronger culture and shared understanding between each other. So when I think of school and when I think of public education, that's definitely what I believe in. And I think it's so important. And I know that our district provides that. And I'm very proud to be a part of that. And I know that the parents, when I think about how many people, myself included, when my children were young, moved to within our the district's borders because they came here for the education. And they're staying here so that they can probably, also move on to Fremont Union. And I think that we need to remember that, and we need to make sure that what we are providing for them and what we're providing for our teachers to uphold that promise that we're giving them is really important. And so that's what I'm really looking forward to, communicating out to our parent community, but also working together with our district and our management in our district to continue that and make sure that we're doing that and that the teachers can really provide what they need for our students. I'm looking forward to hearing from Chris tonight about the budget. I saw some mostly black in there, but I saw some red too. So I'd like to hear what he has to say. And I'm looking forward to working with him and on our budget advisory committee through the year and with our other unions, with representatives from our district offices and management, as well as community and parent members. I think it makes a really great way for us to all have a transparent look at our budget, communicate that out and explain it to our community, and also find ways to make it to make the best use of our funding. So thank you so much and happy 23-24. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. On behalf of the board, I want to echo your well wishes to all of our teachers and all of our staff. We know they're getting busy, getting ready, and Monday is the official day, but we know that they're all working already at home or, back in the classrooms, those kinds of things, because we know how dedicated everyone is that works here. I love the shirt, peace, love, and public education. It all goes hand in hand. So we look forward to working with you and with all the bargaining groups this year. So thank you for coming today. Okay, so we're going to move on to agenda item 6.1, public comment. This is the time for public comments for items that are not on the agenda. We limit each comment to no more than 3 minutes per person, depending on how many comments we have, for a total of 20 minutes during this segment of the agenda. If not all comments are able to be heard on the non-agenda items, then the non-agenda item comments will resume at the end of our agenda. So, Erin, do we have any public comments?
We do. We have one public comment.
Okay.
Tariq Turk, if you could please raise your hand. Tariq Turk. I do not see any hands raised.
All right, Tariq, so if you aren't able to get on, you can always email us at board@cusdk8.org, and we always respond to email. All right, so with that, then we will move on to agenda item number 7, Superintendent's report, and I'll turn the time over to Superintendent Yao.
Thank you. So just kind of following along what Kate mentioned, it's been a busy last week and a half, but a lot of excitement going on as we've been welcoming different groups back. Last Friday, we held our first all management advance and bringing in all managers for a day of training, which I think was great. We got to set the tone for the year, shared with them our district priorities. We followed up. We had an all principal advance on Monday. On Wednesday, we had all our secretaries back in. Today, we had our SITs coming in. And throughout all of this week, we've had our new teachers, both special education and our gen ed teachers. And it's just been exciting to see the new faces and hear their questions and see their energy in the rooms. It's also been our opportunity just to get around to each of the groups that I share with them what our district priorities are, and sharing that new district priority of sense of belonging and where we came from with that, where last year was a focus, but really putting it as a higher priority now and talking them through that. So I think there's a lot of understanding, and we'll continue to do that and be that emphasis so that we know that every staff member and our community understands what our district priorities are, and we'll continue to give updates on those throughout the year. So we know that next week is going to be here very quickly. I know that teachers have been in the classrooms already, getting ready, getting set up. Monday's their official day back, and we'll kick it off in the afternoon with an ice cream social over at our Meyer Holtz Blacktop, and hope that everyone can attend. And we'll make it a fun, festive day, but it's also just that opportunity for them to connect and re-energize with their colleagues, because as a big district, they don't always get to see each other. They don't get to know what each other's doing, and one to see old colleagues, but one to get to see those new colleagues. So it's always a super special day for me. And then we look forward to welcoming the students on Thursday, and let's get the year 23-24 going. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Yao. And now we are going to move on to the consent calendar. These are items concerning routine school operations or items that we've already reviewed and discussed. So can I get a motion?
I move to approve items 8.1 through 8.13.
Great, thank you, Jerry. And a second?
I will go ahead and second.
Thank you, Ava. Do we have any public comments?
No.
Let's go ahead and do a roll call vote.
Trustee Manhattan.
Aye.
Trustee Chow.
Aye.
Trustee Lu.
Aye.
Trustee Leon.
Aye. All right, thank you. And with that, we are going to move on to information presentation. First item, 9.1, spring data collection, consolidated application reporting system. And I believe our presenter is Chris.
Yes, thank you. As pulling up the presentation, I just want to start off by saying that tonight this item is an information item. This is a semi-annual item that we bring to the board. It's all kind of tied to our processes for applying for funding. You've heard of the term CARS, which is the Consolidated App Reporting System. But I thought I'd kind of go through, I mean, not really the report itself, but really the concept of why we have to do this CARS report. And it all goes back to, really, it ties back to the consolidated application. You've heard Allison talk about the consolidated application. We bring that to you as well for approval. But the CARS is the actual system, the online system for which we go in and do all the applying for all the various federal fundings. And so with that just kind of gives you the reasons why we have to do this spring release. Maybe go to the next slide. So as I said, there's the consolidated application is the application for funding for purposes of accessing federal funding, also tied to the federal addendum that we bring to the board as well from time to time. And as I said, it's a condition of funding. But then there's the act of actually going into the system and doing all the reporting, and that is the actual CARS report. Because as part of all this, maybe skip to the next page, part of all this is in the act of applying for funding, we actually have to go in there and then report semi-annually to the federal governments in terms of how we are spending the monies down so that they can monitor the progress and making sure that we're in compliance. And so really, this is that I was referring to, that semi-annual process that in the spring, although it's not our spring, it's really the federal government's spring. And so this is the time of year that we're actually reporting on how we spent monies from the prior fiscal year to the federal government. And then also the process of applying for funding for the 23-24 school year. So we do the spring release process now, and then the winter release is generally around, actually the spring. We brought to you last spring the winter release for the Khan app. So I just kind of give you a sense in terms of what it looks like. The next slide, please. I touched upon, again, the purpose of funding. I mean, so for the majority of our federal funding, which is Title I, Title II, Title III, and Title IV. Title I, I think we're all very familiar with. Title II is mainly for professional development opportunities. Title III is to support English language acquisition as well as supporting immigrants. And Title IV is what?
Combination.
Child saver.
Okay. Okay.
I'm so sorry. Could you repeat that?
So Title IV is mainly used for. I'm going to defer to Allison.
Yeah, this is the one that's a small amount of money, but it has 3 areas. One is education of the whole child, another is about safety, and another is tech.
Okay, thank you so much. And then what I thought I'd just touch upon is, with this federal funding obviously comes with all those particular strings attachments. And so there are all of these assurances, these federal assurances that we must certify that as a district and as a board, we're in compliance with to accept this funding. And obviously, I'm not going to go into these, but you can kind of get a sense in terms of what we have to do to make sure that we're in compliance to spend the funds. And so this is one of the things that we do have to take cautious of, making sure that we follow the requirements. Next page, please. And then I was just going to kind of wrap things up in terms of, again, this federal funding cycle. We think that we get funding we think that we get this as annual funding, that we have to spend it all within one academic year, but really the federal funding cycle is a little bit different. There's actually a total of 27 months for which we have to actually expend and liquidate all of the funds that we have. So it's not that we only have 12 months to spend down the monies, and we do our best to spend it down within the time allowed, but knowing that we have a little bit of time to spend it, and now enables us to kind of make long-term plans in terms of how we spend those dollars down. But that's really just how the cycle works. And the federal cycle goes from October 1st through September 30th of each year. And I think that's all I was going to present. But the document there is our application. It just shows how much funding we've requested for funding for each of the title programs. And that is it. And so this is just for information tonight. We would like to bring this back on the agenda next time for the board to approve at our next meeting, if you so choose.
I think one of the other pieces important, when you think about when we do talk about our budget and we have all of our line items and we talk about restricted funds, these are restricted funds. This is our system of accountability. We are only allowed to spend these dollars in certain ways, certain allocations. So we're held accountable by the federal government.
Great. Thank you. Are there any clarifying questions from the board?
Yeah, I have one question, Chris. You said it's a 27 months, right? So it's annually we would be requesting this. Every year you have to file this, right?
The report, there's a semi-annual requirement to report each time how we are spending the dollars, and then in the process of this, we do the applying for funding. But we do this twice a year.
Twice a year.
This report.
Timeline for 23-24. Yeah, timeline 23-24 is up till 25, right?
That represents the 27-month period of time that we have to spend. So we would be entitled, we would get our Title I entitlement for the 23-24 school year, and which would cover the first 12 months through 24, the second 12 months through 25, and then the final 3 months through September 30th of 2025.
Next year, we will be doing the same thing. Then another 27 months will be overlapping with this.
Yeah, there would be overlapping because we would then get another entitlement for the 24-25 year, say for Title I as an example. So you literally have 27 months to spend each year's entitlement.
It actually helps allow when we're looking at our long-term planning, because we know that we don't have to spend this money in the 1 year. We can do our strategic planning that's for multiple years out, and then that becomes a cycle. So it's actually useful for us to know that we have that amount of time. Similar to what they did when they released the COVID funds, is that we had an amount that was given up front, but we had several years to cover it. So it does help in our budget planning.
Thank you.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And is it okay to bring it back? I
As
guess
a
on
consent item, okay.
Yeah, is that what we typically have
We
done in the
have,
past? Okay. Do we have any public comments for this item?
No, we do not.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chris. All right, we're going to move on to the next item, 10.1, a discussion item on the district 45-day budget update. I think, Chris, you're up again.
All right, thank you. Well, exciting news that the state finally adopted its budget, always after ours. So this is just a requirement that we have to do. Once the state adopts its budget, we have within 45 days to publicly communicate and bring to the board any significant changes to the budget. And so tonight, I'm going to share with you just some of the deltas between what assumptions we made as our adopted budget of significance. So can we switch to the next slide, please? Okay, so just briefly, I mean, you know, what I'm kind of reviewing for you are those assumptions that we built into the adopted budget back in June, and then those changes to the assumption based off of the enacted budget. So you can see the before and after. And just first start off with the 8% COLA. We had built into our budget the 8% COLA being projected at that time. And I'm happy to hear that the state budget held, and they did approve the 8% COLA on the 8.22 COLA. I'm sorry, but we were able to then offer the 8% salary COLA. And the reason why I put this up was, as you recall, when we brought to you the budget, because of the timing of when we were going to be able to actually have the board approve the 8% COLA, we had it built into our budget for 23-24, but as you recall me saying that we weren't able to actually plug it into the actual salaries for both certificated and classified at the time, and that we had carried the value or the amount of the 8% raise in our ending fund balance. So now that we've now rolled into the new year, payroll has gotten all the information in there. All of the salary schedules now reflect the 8% salary increase that we gave to the employees, and that now number is actually now going to be built into what we call that object code level for certificated and classified salaries. So it's significant enough to the point where we just move the money up from the bottom line up to the top line. And so that's really the significance of why I'm calling it out now, because when we adopted the budget, we didn't budget it in that category. It was budgeted as part of the bottom line ending fund balance. Hopefully I'm clear enough as far as the purpose of that. Now, beyond that, the only other major changes were with the revenue assumptions were in the areas of the Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant, the Art Music Instructional Materials Block Grant, as well as the Prop 28 money. So as you recall, the governor was proposing to make some significant reductions to both the Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant and to the Art Music Instructional Block Grant. Back originally, he was proposing to cut about 32% from the Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant and almost 50% to the art and music. Thank goodness that the legislature did not go forward with that recommendation. So when the legislature approved the final budget, they did reduce the cut, not as much, but still a cut is still a cut. So they reduced the Learning Recovery Block Grant down to just 15% of the original amount. So that a 15% cut is about $1 million. But when we adopted our budget, we were assuming the worst case scenario. We were assuming that we were going to reduce by about 2.2 million. So really, we're adding 1.1 million back to the budget because of not having as much of a cut as originally planned. So similarly for the Art Music Instructional Block Grant, as I mentioned, Governor was proposing to cut 50% of that. But the cut actually only comes out to about 6%. So the cut really only turns out to be about a little bit more than $457,000. And so that enabled us to put back about $4 million of original plans to support the art music program. So those are all two changes since our adopted budget. And the only other reference I wanted to make was in regards to Prop 28. At the time of when we adopted our budget, there wasn't yet enough information yet to put Proposition 28 into our budget. We didn't have the state resource code. We didn't have all the regs on it. We have some of that information now, but we haven't received everything. And so staff is kind of right now waiting to get the last pieces so that we can actually load this into our escape budget. But we do have confirmation on the amounts that we're expected to receive. So we're expecting still to receive about $1.6 million annually from Proposition 28 to support the art and music program. But I just can't give the keys yet to Allison to start spending it because we don't have the account set up yet. But the good news is it will be coming. And then I thought I'd just kind of wrap up on, where do we go next? So what you see here is our multi-year projection. This, however, is still the multi-year projection as of the adopted budget. So I'm just providing this as the context because as we get closer, I mean, we're just about ready to close our books. And so when I come back to you at our first meeting in September, when we review the unaudited actuals for the 22-23 school year, we will have then an updated ending number for last year. Because when I brought to you the multi-year projection at this time, we had an estimated number for the last fiscal year. So we'll update this with the new beginning number. And then we'll kind of go through and start talking about what are their assumption changes, because then we'll then start to segue into bringing to you the first interim budget. So between September and December, we'll give you the updated multi-year projection that will now take into account any changes, as I was showing you with these revenue changes and then these expenditure changes. All of those will then be reflective in the multi-year projection, but we won't give you the new multi-year projection with everything until first interim. But I will at least share to you what the multi-year projection as of the adopted budget once we get the final numbers for last year. So just want to kind of give you that little preview in terms of what's to come. And then, like anything else, as I said back in June, we're just going to be continuing to monitor the state of the state economy and just seeing how things are materializing. I've been reading in some places that right now the state revenues are tracking as they had projected. So I guess that's a good sign right now that they're not really talking about, or at least no one's talking now about state revenues coming in drastically less than what was originally projected. So I think that's good news. But we'll have more information to come. But that was all I was planning to review with the board tonight. So if there's any questions.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions from the board?
Okay, I can ask a question. So this art, the art, right, that we we can use that money for multiple year, right? Or
No.
is it that for
The art music block grant money, we could
Yeah,
use
yeah.
it for multiple years.
Yes.
multiple years?
Yes. And so
the one-time money, but it can last.
we have through 2025, I believe.
It's one-time money.
You use it. What it allows us to do, because maybe the question is out there, is when we put together our multi-year, we had a plan that was spread out over the 3 years. What we did with the unknowing that whether the funding was going to come back funded at its original course, we moved forward with our plan for year one. So it was great news when we found out that the funding would continue, because otherwise we would be coming back next year and trying to figure out how to fund it for the following years. That's resolved now. We'll continue with our plan of implementing the arts and music, which we had our commitment to.
That's good. Okay, thank you. John Hans.
Great. Oh, yeah.
Okay, if we could, we're on this slide. So it looks like we, had fewer cuts or in the restricted funds than we had expected in the budget that we adopted. I just want to confirm that we really haven't changed our plan. So this is really extra money that basically goes back on unrestricted funds, right? Because presumably it's just what happens. So let's say take the arts and music instructional material, right? So we were expecting a 4.5 million cut. Turns out to be a $450,000 cut. So does that free up money that we were going to spend in that area, or?
Well, maybe I would say it this way. I mean, we had a plan I know we had brought to the board plans to spend these dollars. Now, because of the potential for the cuts, I think it was Stacy was referring to, we would have had to come back to readjust the original plan. So I think we're going to go forward with our original plan to spend it because that original plan was based on this dollar amount.
On which one? The one that was enacted or the adopted?
Well, the enacted amount now.
I'm sorry?
The higher amount.
The higher amount.
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, you're basically showing the plans aren't changing from last
Yeah.
time then. Okay, that's
Bottom line is our original plans aren't changing. Luckily enough, we didn't have to come back to you with a revision because of the cuts.
great. Terrific. Thanks. Second sort of question, comment, if we go to the next slide. It's just sort of a thought, I was looking at this earlier this week and I'm thinking, wow, this is a lot of numbers and, it probably follows sort of the regular rhythm pattern. I wonder if it's possible to sort of show, some of the assumptions that go into building these projections. What I'm thinking about are, we've talked about wanting to invest in certain areas in our district priorities. Right. And at a high level, is it possible? And I know it's not directly linked to this but to talk about the kinds of support we're putting behind the priorities as part of this. I don't know if that makes sense.
Can I take a stab at it? I mean, if I'm understanding, if we were to take our district priorities and utilize, I guess what I'm trying to think is that we have to work within the confines of the state accounting code structure. Within the state accounting code structure is an account code, or that we call functionality.
Mm-hmm.
So it represents how much money we spend on things for instructional purposes, thing for administrative, professional development. So there might be a way where we could actually look at how we spend our money in those areas, those functional areas, and then maybe tie it back to our priorities, because we can certainly identify all of those function areas that fall within the priorities, and then we can monitor how we do in those areas. It's just a suggestion.
Thanks for sort of reading my mind here. This is the kind of thing I'm thinking about, that next level of detail, because we've talked about these priorities and I want to see, what kind of resources, how are we investing in them over time, whatever that measure is. I know the measure is going to be imperfect and it's really a proxy, but I think if we keep the same sorts of measures over time, just sort of seeing how we invest in these. So it's a very fuzzy ask, but it sounds like you kind of, as usual, read my mind and figured something out. So it's just a sort of a request, I guess, but a very light request to, I'm always cognizant, even though Phyllis is not here, to make sure we don't burden you all with sort of unnecessary work. So it's just a sort of a very light request, if it's possible.
Sure.
Right. Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks, Jerry. I like that idea as well. I think it would be great to get something like that for us to see it just helps with big picture understanding. I had a question about the bullet, continue monitoring whether, it was on that page, yeah. Continue monitoring whether the state projected revenues are too optimistic. I just wanted to dwell on that for a second. Is that referring to like October, when all the income taxes come in and what it looks like, and kind of being not as optimistic?
Well, I mean, that was always my thoughts, since I shared that with you back in June, that we needed to be very cautious, and then we were really not certain whether or not the state revenues were going to come in as projected. And that's what I was saying, was that I've just been reading recently that it looks like the state's saying that things are coming in as they're hoping. So that's just really more of just a disclaimer that we just want to be cautious of that, because state revenues are still coming in. Your comment specifically in regards to when the state tax filing period, the state really is guessing or projecting what that looks like. But I think the good thing about this is that between now and November, there'll be routine updates in terms of revenue projections. Because usually in November, that's when the legislative analyst's office comes out and kind of updates and updates where the state is with its revenue projections as well. So I think it's just more knowing that we just have to kind of keep track of the bouncing ball, really.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just to review, can you help me remind me, the learning recovery emergency block, is that for the summer programs and the ELOP, right?
Yep.
Does that affect that?
Two different pots of money. The ELOP or ELOP program is a different funding source.
Okay, so the learning recovery covers.
I'll defer to Allison.
So there's a couple of different areas. One is related to extended learning time. So
Mhm.
things like our learning hubs, the summer bridge program, reading intervention, costs related to those things. And then there is another area that is related to whole child and well-being. So this is things like our recess support through things like the La Garza or Valley Sports, as well as some additional staff time in things like nursing, special education program management, psychologists, counselors, things like that. So we're just thankful that we were able to continue planning in the out years, because when we start these things, we want to know that we're going to keep it going. So that's the great news.
Mm-hmm.
That was helpful. Thank you. And then the second question is, I think you mentioned these are the larger pots that have change in reduction. I guess what I'm wondering is how much is it affecting the budget since from last year's outlook, in terms of where's that extra money going? I mean, these are specific categories, but in general, is there a difference in which we are having, I guess, less of a payment? Does that make sense?
I'm not quite tracking, but let me.
I mean, are we having a smaller amount of revenue expenditures because the cuts are less than what we anticipated, not just in these specific categories, but overall?
Okay, so I think I understand what you're asking. Obviously, these are specific.
Yes.
So these programs, more revenue than what we budgeted. But I think maybe to your other question is, are there other changes budgetarily speaking, revenue, as you use revenue as an example, that we know at this time that's going to affect the budget? And as I had said, tonight the purposes was to identify the major changes. There's always little changes with our revenues and expenditures, and that information will certainly bring back as a full update when we do the first interim, because once we do the first interim, it'll kind of capture all of the changes to the budget, including these major ones, but like little things. I mean, try to think of an example. I mean, for every, I know we get smaller grants and smaller donations and things like that. Those things will be added to the budget at such time the revenues and expenditures we put in there. But at this point of the game, we don't have all of that information compiled yet. So really, I can't necessarily quantify for you what the changes are. Even for the multi-year, even for the adopted budget multi-year projection, I can't give to you yet what are the other changes yet, because a lot of them are, I mean, we're kind of in the process now of updating it. So really, the first interim, the intent of the first interim is to really kind of share with you then all of the details and changes at that point in time. But please understand that we're making updates to the budget daily. So we make updates to the budget as new information becomes available.
I think the other piece that then Chris alluded to earlier is just in the process of closing out the books too. Once that's done and those unaudited come back to you, we have a better idea of where we finished at the end of the year and that's incorporated into the budget as well.
Now, I know that you have mentioned that in October, like, since people still have time to file their taxes in October, so there is a chance of this changing until the first item.
Well, I would say that
Even though
depending
they-
upon what happens with the state as far as their revenue projections, I would say that right now is, we're not planning to make any changes to our budget. But the reason why I say that is that, there's always the what if the state says that their revenue isn't going to come in, that they could come back and say, well, we need to make some, cuts or major cuts. But I'm not saying that that's going to happen. All I was just wanting to make sure as a district that we're just cognizant of the fact that there's a lot of uncertainty, and that because the state tax revenues, as you heard me say, there's a lot of volatility with the tax revenues, that everything is kind of based on a set of assumptions, and that's really the takeaway from here is that we're going to be updating these assumptions, and what we're talking about tonight are assumptions, and I think what you're asking for is, or what are the other assumption changes, and so we're just going to kind of have to monitor it as we go forward.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any public comments for this item?
No, we do not.
All right. Okay, and then Chris, when will this come back then?
Well, this is for information. There's no action that you're taking on it. Then, as I said, the next bit of information I'll come back to you. We'll come back to you in September when we final close out for last year, and then we'll talk budget again at that point.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, moving on. Next item is 11.1 board activity. This is a chance for board members to share and receive information regarding committee meetings or events that they have attended. So who would like to start?
I think all three of us were there for the Tayakawa
Yeah, the
sister city thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
Sister City, Toyokawa.
three of us.
Yeah, it was a bell ringing in terms of recognizing the bombing of Hiroshima and 3 days later Nagasaki. So the timing of it being held and bell ringing at 2:00 was the closest to the same time in which the first bomb was dropped in Hiroshima at 6 p.m. It was this past Sunday that we did that. And it was more recognizing the peace and unfortunately, Stacy wasn't able to make it, but made a comment saying that it's good that we have a relationship with another sister city, and that our students hopefully this year will continue doing the exchange program and sharing of cultures, and continue with the hope of peace and continue that. So since the pandemic, we have not done it. So we're hoping that this year that will happen for our students.
Anything else?
I think that's it.
for me.
Yeah, all right, this last board meeting, yes.
Okay, great. All right, then last on the agenda tonight is agenda setting. Does anyone have any agenda items they're either calling to review or requesting new items to be added? Okay, well then with that, I will close tonight's meeting. Our next meeting will be in 2 weeks on August 24th. And as we mentioned earlier, the first day of school is next Thursday. So we want to wish everyone, all the families and students and parents and teachers and staff and everyone out there a great first day of school. And of course, all of our staff who are working starting next week as well, that they'll have a great week and just a great kickoff to the school year. So thanks everyone who joined, and we will see you next time. I adjourn this meeting at 6:42 p.m.
Welcome.